Hello readers, I'm Amy, here today to talk about poetry, which I've actually already talked about on my channel and my mind has already changed a little bit. So there was a video that I made last year. I think I tried to private it, but it's still getting comments. I don't know, I haven't figured that part out yet. And I had started a series on genres that I don't really read a lot of, genres that I don't particularly enjoy, generally, but books from those genres that I have really liked and that have changed my mind a little bit. And one of those genres was poetry. And I always thought I'm never going to private my videos because no matter how bad they are, that video is part of my growth as a YouTuber, as an editor, whatever. And I ended up privating it because almost every comment that I got on that video was someone generally being pretty mean about how I read, like whether or not I enjoy poetry. And there's a way to talk about that, and the way that most people talked about that was not it. I got called young lady several times, told that my opinion was wrong. So, let me start this off with saying I have never been a poetry person. It's never been a genre that has really spoken to me. From the poetry, I feel like a lot of what I say here, if you've already watched my old video, then you'll already know this opinion in this background, but in high school, in school, a lot of the poetry that you focus on is like the classic, you have to know this person kind of poetry. It would be pretty flowery in its writing, pretty metaphorical, and a lot of that stuff I just couldn't really wrap my head around, or it didn't speak to me. Some forms of writing and some genres just don't speak to some people, and that's fine. You know, I also don't like reading westerns or anything that's absurdist, and that's just my personal taste. So, anyways, that's the kind of poetry that I grew up having to read for school, and I never enjoyed it. Then Rupi Kaur came along, and I really loved Milk and Honey. I borrowed it from a friend. I loved it so much that I bought it. And then that was another part of the video, was getting all of these comments on how Rupi Kaur isn't poetry. Amanda Lovelace isn't poetry. I will show you an example from Amanda Lovelace's book, one of her books. This is her poetry style. This is really Rupi Kaur and Amanda Lovelace's poetry styles. They don't have a lot of words. It is generally a sentence or two that is broken up into bits and pieces and then flung around a page. A lot of people call it insta poetry. A lot of people take issue with the amount of space that it takes up on a page, saying it's wasting paper. And I have further thoughts on that. This whole video is going somewhere, I promise. Insta poetry, I don't really have an issue with. They take a really short sentence, they try to bundle up all this knowledge into a single sentence or a single quote or a single phrase and put it out there. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm here for inspirational quotes. Like, I don't know how far they get me through life, and I only enjoy them for a second, but I'm fine with that, and that this is an entryway into poetry. Like, it doesn't have to be your kind of poetry to be poetry. And for someone like me who isn't into the metaphors and the flowery writing and who has struggled to get into poetry, this is huge for me that I have enjoyed reading this. It's my entryway into the genre. I've found my niche in the genre that can maybe help me work my way into those other kinds of poetry, or maybe not, who knows. And as for taking up space on the page, this is something that really gets me. It doesn't matter how you take up space, you should just be able to have your space. And for this poetry, it's not even just the writing of the poetry or structuring a sentence into little bits and pieces. It's a visual poetry. The way the poem takes up space on the page is part of the poem. It's part of the message. And I am very visually inclined. I love painting. I love pencil. I've worked with pastel. I am apparently having an obsession with resin art right now. I'm a very visual person. Getting into photography, enjoying film editing. I am all about the visuals. And to see the structure of the poem on the page is something else about Rupi Kaur and Amanda Lovelace that really get to me. And I'm citing those two specifically because those are the two that I've read. And continuing on my poetry journey from that video and from reading these books, lately, I don't even remember how it started. It was just one of those things that pops up on YouTube. I'm watching YouTube and I see this recommendation for someone speaking for Button Poetry. Button Poetry is one of the YouTube channels that I've started watching. I'll link it down below. And there's this woman, this black woman, speaking spoken word, slam poetry. I'm not totally sure on the differences right now. I will learn the differences. I can't even remember which topic it was on. I ended up clicking on several. A lot of them had to do with racism. Some of them had to do with periods. But that changed everything for me, and it has changed my position on poetry quite drastically. It has gotten me more interested. This has only happened in like the last 2 weeks. But I found in watching the slam poetry / spoken word, whichever it is, whatever it's called, I will try to link some of the ones that I watched down below. Hearing it spoken out loud changed everything. Like, I think I'm actually kind of into poetry now. I might be willing to branch out more in poetry, to try more poetry, because I tried Ruby Core by borrowing it from a friend without using my own money or anything, because I was intrigued and I enjoyed it. And now I'm watching slam poetry and spoken word and enjoying it. And this could be my entry into it. But do I want to enter into the poetry realm? Because this is the other thing. I've had other videos like the one I did on poetry. I did one for fantasy books and I did one for YA books. I am not a big fantasy genre person. It's not the genre that I usually reach for, although I am more interested in it lately. YA is not a genre, whatever you would like to call it, that I reach for, because the writing just is not at the level that I would like it to be. That sounds bad, but that's like the only way I know how to explain it. Anyways, those are not genres that I'm into, but I still did a video about them saying these are genres that I don't really read, but here's some books from those genres that I really like. And neither of those videos, which were structured in the same way, got the commentary that my poetry one did. So I've kind of got to conclude from this experience that people in the poetry world are pretty snobbish about what poetry is, and that makes me hesitate still to really enjoy poetry and like poetry, because it's like, do I want to interact with that crowd? But then also, here I am on YouTube spouting my opinions, and yeah, there's some people who don't like that, but I'm still here, and I'm still talking about it, so why should it matter what kind of poetry I like? I should be able to like the poetry that I like and not worry about what people think. And there's yet another thought on the end of that, on not worrying what people think. I have a very small channel, 500 plus of you. I've been here for a year and a couple months, and that video on poetry has, over 700 or 800 views? And for a video that is so unpopular on my channel, and a very opinionated video on my channel, and one that does not encompass all of the things that I have to say, I ended up privating it because I didn't want that to be necessarily people's way into my channel. Like, I want them to see my other stuff and to explore my channel, and not just immediately go to this video and say, oh, she hates poetry, I'm out. Because hating poetry is too general of a statement for my feelings, and you gotta give me more chances than just one video. And that was also my lesson in understanding why people private their videos, because I didn't really understand that at first, because I'm like, you're growing as a person, you should celebrate it. And now I'm like, that's one reason why you private videos. But anyway, this whole video has just been a discussion on privating videos and poetry and my poetry journey, and an update on my poetry thoughts, because I just felt really rambly this morning. The sun is about to move into my eyes, so I am going to move into the other room and work on actually editing some of the videos that I have been actually filming lately. And I hope that you can all like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I think I'm a pretty awesome person on social media. And I hope to see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.